Hey, you're listening to the wrong podcast. Topics today include movies, and movies.
Wrong! What's wrong with you? What's wrong with y'all?
What's wrong with you?
What's wrong with you people? Wrong! You do have to tolerate it. It's my show.
Hi, I'm Tim. I'm here to talk about politics, culture, religion, sports, and anything else you're not allowed to talk about in polite company. Special guest host, Jeremy. Welcome, Jeremy.
Thank you, Tim.
You're welcome. I need to tell everybody two things about Jeremy. The first is that he is the co-host of another podcast called The Freshman 15. And he is the former lead singer of Chumbawamba.
Wrong!
Well, it's true. It's been a while. I got knocked down, but I get up again.
It can never keep you down. No. That's what I appreciate about you, Jeremy. I can throw that at you and you're like, yes, I am going to recite the lyrics to Tub Thumpin'.
That's right. That came to play, dude. This is the wrong podcast.
Good job. Well, the Freshman 15, why don't you tell people what the Freshman 15 is?
The Freshman 15 is a podcast that we're in our third season, and admittedly, we've taken most of the year off because my podcast partner is being difficult. But what we do each season, we pick 15 films, specifically freshman films. In other words, the very first film of a famous director, and we talk about that film. So, for example, on our episode that we wanted to talk about the Coen brothers, we used Blood Simple, their first film, to talk about that, and on and on. It's usually a pretty good way in to talk about the whole career of this director and how far they came, and it's just, it's fun, especially for film nerds. We like it.
Yeah, if you're a film nerd, it is great. And you also do a special episode every year that I really appreciate, which is you review all the Oscar movies, the Oscar-nominated movies.
That's right.
Which allows me to have some information about movies that I maybe hadn't seen yet or maybe want to see.
Yeah. And
how do you get that? Do you actually go to the theater and get all those? Or are you guys getting review copies or anything like that?
Yeah, I try and actually last year was particularly tough. But it is true that even though I'm not in a committee or something like that gets review copies, I'm fortunate enough to have a couple of relationships with people that are willing to loan their review copies. So,
well, I mean, once you tell people that you're the former lead singer of Chumbawamba, they're like, yeah. How can I help?
Yeah, and they're like, I had no idea that, here you go, here's Parasite. So, yeah, it usually works out, but I'm certainly not an advocate of, piracy or borrowing, in nefarious ways. So we try and stay as legit as possible on our podcast.
By no means was I accusing you of being a pirate.
That's all right. Just a 90s pop singer.
Issue number 1, Footloose. Jeremy, let's just talk movies we love first.
Yeah.
No controversy. Well, maybe there will be. Oh. This could be controversial. First, tell me what's your favorite movie.
My favorite movie, it's not even close. It's Joe versus the Volcano.
Wow. I know he can get the job, but can he do the job?
Can he do the job? I'm not arguing that with you. No, it's true. When I was 15 years old, I saw younger than that. But I remember when I was 15, I decided that was my favorite movie, and it's never changed. I think it's the greatest film. I'm not saying it's the greatest film of all time. It's the greatest film for me that I've ever seen. I love it. People, when I tell them that, there's always a pause where people think, okay, well,
he's joking.
Where's the irony? Okay, here, let's hit me with whatever shtick you've got before you tell me it's actually Schindler's List. I'm not kidding. I think it is the greatest film of all time is Joe versus the Volcano. It's beautifully written. It's honestly the movie I try to pattern my life after. See, there it is. I'm not lying, though. It really is.
I know you're not. You're being serious, and it is a fun movie.
It's great. For my 40th birthday, my wife threw me a Joe versus the Volcano themed party at a theater where she actually rented the movie theater out, and we all
Awesome.
watched Joe versus the Volcano.
That's great. And is she a flibbity? Is she a bit of a flibbity gibbet?
A flibber to gibbet. Yeah, she can be, but this is true. I always tell people, and you're not going to get this if you haven't seen the movie, but when I met Carrie, my wife, I like to think that I found my Patricia, which was a very, very big, very big find for me. I'm really impressed that you can just rattle off these Joe versus the Volcano references.
It's a great movie.
Yeah.
How could I not?
How could you not? What's your favorite?
Well, my favorite's Schindler's List.
Of course it is.
Just kidding.
Because you're a good person.
So here's my problem with this question. If somebody says, what's your top 10 movies? I've got 15 to 20.
Right.
If somebody says, what's your top 5? I've got 10. What's your top favorite movie? I've got 5.
Right.
And I just decided out of those 5, I need to say Lawrence of Arabia.
Oh.
Because I love it and nobody else says it. But I think it's a masterpiece and it's totally worth watching. It's just beautifully shot, stunning story that you probably never heard and based on true history.
Now, I probably 40 years ago, you'd have more people saying Lawrence of Arabia, but it is true in this day and age. And you're right. This is a freaking gorgeous movie. I mean, and I'm a person, and when I mentioned this on my own podcast, I don't mind being clubbed over the head with visual metaphors and stuff. I actually love that. I think that's one of the things that film does in a fantastic way. And I think Lawrence of Arabia does beautiful visual metaphors that I think we're still referencing without even knowing it today.
Oh, absolutely. And the score. The score is like, once you hear it, in fact, here, I'll play a clip.
All right.
It's in your head now. It's there.
I mean, I can imagine the striking match as I hear those beautiful tunes.
Second question. Who's your favorite director?
So favorite director, that's tough. Now you sent me a couple of questions to think on in advance of this.
Right. So you knew this was coming. This wasn't a surprise.
No, but I started categorizing them. I mean, honestly, I think it's probably a tie between the Coen brothers and Martin Scorsese as far as favorite directors go. And that's probably a little bit more boring and expected of an answer than Joe versus the Volcano was. But I mean, how can you mess with just absolutely perfect directing? And both the Coens and Scorsese do that. So
the Coen brothers, so those are different directors in that Scorsese kind of makes the same kind of movie every time. Like
most of them, yeah.
His range is kind of here, but
right.
But the Coen brothers, they've got this huge range. They're like, hey, we're going to make this totally different movie this time. We're going to do this genre. We're going to do that genre.
Yeah, and weirdly, like with the Coen brothers, even though they're all over the place with genre and types of stories they do, you can't mistake a Coen brothers movie either. Like you're like, well, only they could have done that, and it's hard to define. There was a film that George Clooney directed a few years ago called Suburbicon, and I watched it with my wife, and I'm like, wow, that's the first non-Coen brothers directed Coen brothers movie I think I've ever seen. That was, sure enough, the credits come up, written by Joel and Ethan Coen. So I'm like, well, there it is. Of course.
There you go.
Yeah.
So my favorite director is somewhat like the Coen brothers, but from a different era. So first, let me tell you, over the pandemic, I just said, hey, you know what? Sports is off. I'm going to try to watch every Hitchcock movie I can.
Yeah.
I doubt I can watch all of them, but I'm going to watch a ton.
Yeah.
And I've probably seen 75% of them.
Oh, dude, that's a feat.
And let me tell you, Alfred Hitchcock is not always a good director. Like, he's made some stinky movies.
Yeah.
Just bad.
I mean, that's bad as a bold statement, but yeah, there's some that I definitely am not as hip on.
Oh, I could send you some where you'd be like, oh, this is awful. Like, I don't like, I'm only finishing it because I have to. Like,
Yeah.
So I don't say that to say that Alfred Hitchcock is my favorite director, but to say that he has a contemporary named Billy Wilder.
Sure.
Who is just, he's so much better than Alfred Hitchcock in everything he does. He made movies like The Apartment and Some Like It Hot and Sunset Boulevard, which I just saw. Like every Billy Wilder movie I've ever seen, I've been like, that was great.
Yeah.
I'm so glad I watched that.
Yeah. Yeah, he had something. Billy Wilder had something really, really special going on, and it's he had that sort of je ne sais quoi. and that's it's the magic element that can't be defined. And every so often you have a director who somehow even becomes important to the mainstream, that has that thing, that has that sort of gift. And Billy Wilder definitely had it. And, we're lucky to have him.
Yeah. And I don't understand why we don't hear more about Billy Wilder. Like, why is everybody talking about Alfred Hitchcock?
Right.
When Billy Wilder made similar movies at times, but just like he didn't miss ever.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean,
or maybe he did, but I haven't seen one that misses.
Yeah. But definitely, like, especially in this day and age, kind of a director's director where, you look at him. And I say this, and by the way, I am a director as a profession, and you just go, well, all I can do is learn, like, Elia Kazan also, like, someone else that you're just like, I can't even put my finger on what that is. I just have to learn from it, and
just copy it.
Yeah. Yeah. Some of these old guys, Wells, certainly. You think they kind of had nothing to build on in a way, but they just knew how film worked, even though it was early days.
Yeah. Yeah. They knew what they were doing right from the start. Okay. So give me a movie that people maybe haven't seen that you recommend.
Okay. So this was a tough one, but there's a film that came out in 1995 by director Todd Solondz called Welcome to the Dollhouse. And it's one of my favorite movies that not too many people have seen.
I have not seen it.
It's my wife and I reference it and quote it all the time. And it's a story of a girl who's in middle school, and she is absolutely having the worst possible life and experience you can possibly imagine. It's dark comedy. It's almost, I don't even know what the word is. It's just, it's almost too much. It's so dark. You're just like, I can't, no, I can't. But at the same time, it's so funny and so compelling that, if you're aware of any of Todd Solond's work, then, you'll see he's got a certain kind of mood. But my favorite is definitely 1995's Welcome to the Dollhouse, if you get a chance. By the way, if you're looking for something to watch with your children, preview it first. This isn't necessarily something you want to, like, a girl in middle school. Watch it on your own first. But it's hilarious.
Don't assume that middle school girls will be ready for it.
No, and I have a girl in middle school, and I'm not going to probably show her that one maybe till for a while yet.
All right. Well, I'm looking forward to catching that sometime.
Yeah.
That you fulfilled the task by giving me a movie that I had not even heard of.
Well, I'm sure you have one, creative guy like you.
Yes, I do. And back to Billy Wilder, I recommend a movie called Witness for the Prosecution.
Yeah.
And it's based on an Agatha Christie novel, and it's just got these great characters. It's kind of an Alfred Hitchcock movie. You would think, I'm watching an Alfred Hitchcock movie, but it's not. But a great characters, great story. I dare not say more, lest I ruin it, but it's got some really compelling courtroom drama.
Yeah. Yeah. Now I got to go back to that one. It has been years and years. So that's a great reminder.
Yeah, it's fun.
Yeah.
It's good movie. Yeah. Issue number 2, Death Becomes Her. Jeremy, I have a thesis, and that is that movies are dying. They're going away. They're soon to be like poetry, something people study in school, but no longer really participate, no longer like seek out the way they used to.
By the way, apologies to any friends who are fans of or writers of poetry.
Well, yeah, I mean, that's the thing. People write poems, they still do. But like for a while, poetry was the art form, right?
Sure.
Like,
yeah.
And for a good, 70 years of Western culture, movies were the art form that everybody went to.
Yeah.
And I think that this is the beginning of the end for them. Let me tell you why. First, theater attendance is declining. People don't want to go to those big theaters anymore for anything other than superhero movies.
Well, Tim, I mean, come on. People don't want to get sick also.
Well, I'm not just talking about pandemic.
No.
We can remove the pandemic politics and economics from it.
Right.
Even before then, people are like, is that what I want to, like, do I need to see that on a big screen? That's kind of always a question people ask.
Yeah, that's true.
Like, oh, could I watch it at home or do I need to see it on a big screen? Lawrence of Arabia, by the way, a friend, when I said it was my favorite movie, she's like, oh, I see it's free on YouTube. Should I watch it there? And like, I just didn't know what to do. Like, well, yes, I want you to see it, but
yeah,
I want you to see it on something bigger than your phone. Like,
well, now have you seen Lawrence of Arabia in the theater? Because I have not.
Oh my goodness, I have not.
Mm-hmm.
I guess I need to go do that. But I've also seen it. Oh, thank you. I need to see it. I've seen it on big screens, on a big TV, right, at least. Yeah. Okay, so nobody's going to the theater. The Oscar-nominated movies are increasingly movies nobody's seen. Like, it used to be the movies that were nominated were big studio movies, Ben-Hur or Cleopatra or, Lawrence of Arabia. The people had heard of these movies, seen them in the theater. Now, like Nomadland won last year, and very few people have seen it, right?
I don't know. I mean, is that true? I guess. I don't know. Did a lot of... it's so hard to gauge who's seen what, especially in the last year, because buzz has become...
Right. Yes.
Buzz is its own
it's
topic,
Right. Last year is also not fair to compare movies to for different genres.
I mean, do you think, though, that... Oh, okay, sorry. Finish your point.
So I'm building a case.
Go ahead.
Okay. The other thing is that attention spans are decreasing. The people don't want to go to movies, and this is the same in sports. I love baseball, and it's the same problem. People go to a game or they go to a movie, and they want to be on their phone at the same time.
Yeah.
They don't want to be disconnected, and there's something really passive about watching movies, and they want to keep their brains engaged a little bit, and they've got this little device in their hand that allows them to do that. Yeah. So it's easier to watch it at home, where you're not bothering other people by playing words with friends or whatever else you're looking at Facebook or Twitter or whatever. So it's easier to watch at home because you're on your phone and you can stop it whenever you want to. You don't have to commit to 2 hours or 2.5 hours. You're just like, oh, I'll give it 45 minutes and then I'll pick it up later. And then the other reason related to that is that some have said this is the golden age of TV. And I think it's better to describe it as the golden age of streaming, where Netflix and Hulu and Prime, they're making these long form miniseries. It could be 4 episodes or it could be 5 seasons, but they decide, hey, how much room do we need to tell the story the way we want to tell it? And we don't have to tell it in 1 hour increments. We could tell it in 47 minutes, and this one could be 19 minutes. So streaming makes it more flexible for the creator to make something other than a 2-hour movie.
Right. So
tell me, how am I wrong?
I mean, are movies dying? I don't think they're dying. I think movies are... Now, I wouldn't go so far as to say movies are fine. If movies were fine, HBO Max wouldn't be releasing, the biggest moments in their catalog on their streaming platform on the same day as they're putting it out in the theaters. That, to me...
Thank you for making another argument in my favor.
Well, but I mean, clearly that's not a, hey, we're really excited about this content move as much as it is pretty obviously a desperation move. They're trying to figure out how to keep all this afloat. I get it. At the same time, though, I think it's just different kinds of storytelling. I think you have storytelling that fits, and people would say, like the novel versus the short story. I mean, short stories aren't dead. I mean, do people still buy collections of short stories, or do they still read them? Yeah, they do. They also read novels. I think what's happening is there's being a kind of refining of the kind of content that's appropriate for one venue as opposed to another. I mean, the fact of the matter is, there's certain types of stories that they're better as a feature film, And I think that's one of the reasons that we're seeing, especially over the last, 5+ years, kind of a renewed interest in the form of documentary. Documentary, yeah, there's a docuseries, but documentary still kind of feels like it's strongest as a feature, as opposed to a docuseries. Now, docuseries is definitely having its, more and more it's having its day, but those kinds of stories are really, really good stories to tell in 2 hours. I think there's other films too that are just are stories that are really good to tell in a couple of hours. Now, more and more, you get this investment in characters and stories and stuff on, streaming series and those kinds of things. And those tend to be the water cooler type stories that people are talking about the most. But I don't know, man. I mean, I hate to even say movies are like vinyl, because vinyl never really went away. But we all know vinyl is it's not really the form anymore. But at the same time, I don't know, maybe it's just the circles that I run in. I still find myself talking about films with people. That it seems like a pretty vibrant, on our Oscar specials that we do over on my show. We always have a guest named Jeff Jensen, who's a writer and who's worked, in a lot of different types of media and different industry stuff. And this is his big lament, is that he wants to continue to have the experience of corporately experiencing a story and a piece of art rather than, in bed on his tablet or something like that. And I get it. And I think more and more what we're going to see is not necessarily like, okay, well, is this story better for, what kind of screen is the story better for? But like, is this kind of story better to be experienced with a group, or is it better to be experienced, solo or, with your spouse or something like that? I could be wrong about that, but I don't know. Personally, I think movies are still have a lot of life in them.
I think that's a great point. When In the Heights came out, my wife and I, the lovely Wendy, and I went and saw it in the theater. And, somebody kicked my chair and I think a phone went off and you could hear people munching popcorn. And I actually loved it. I was like, yeah, like we're we're here together. And that's partly pandemic related, because it was a feeling of normalcy, but it also felt good that like, hey, all these strangers, we're all experiencing this as one, in a group.
I know there's people that get annoyed when people like applaud in movies. I think it's great. I love it when people love a movie moment so much that they're applauding, because they're like, oh, you morons, there's not a director there. None of the actors are there. Who are you applauding for? We're applauding because we love what's happening. Yes, we're part of the energy of this, and we're just enjoying ourselves.
Yeah. We can't get into this here and now, probably in the way we should, but we feel very differently about Avengers Endgame. But I will say that I am glad I saw it in a theater.
Yeah.
In a packed out theater. Yeah. It made it so much more fun because, there were key moments where everybody's cheering and it made those moments better.
One of the most popular Marvel related movies on YouTube is actually one of the climactic scene in Avengers as experienced in the theater. And you can hear the audio of people gasping and people laughing and clapping and cheering and all this kind of stuff. And I have to tell you, you listen to that, you watch that, even just on your own at home, it kind of does something. Now, I know you're not an Avengers Endgame fan, but man, I don't know. Just, it's like you say, that experience, there's not another way to get that experience, man.
Remember, I want to know what's wrong with you.
What's wrong with you?
If you'd like to submit a question, topic, or tell me how I was wrong, you can email me at listen@therewrongpodcast.com or submit a comment at my website, therongpodcast.com and help me spread the wrong message. If you like what you hear, share it with your friends. Now it's time for my favorite part of the show. I was wrong.
I was wrong. I was wrong.
Jeremy, this comes to both of us. Listener Drew, responding to us on our feelings about killing baby Hitler. He said, "Did you really say murder is okay if justified?" So go ahead, Jeremy. Defend yourself.
Defend myself about killing baby Hitler?
As a murderer.
Yeah, well, I'll say now what I said then. Yes, I would kill baby Hitler. Absolutely.
I think when the time machine is written, maybe before the time machine is invented, we need to write down laws that say, hey, if you invent a time machine, you have, the permission of the United States government to kill these people or to stop this, extrajudiciously go do this thing for us.
Yeah.
We're okay with it.
My theory of time travel allows for the murder of Hitler. I still feel like as a baby, because I still feel like the right things would happen. You'd be like, well, look at all these socio-political movements that actually happened because in response to Nazism. Yeah, okay, but you got to kill baby Hitler. I'm sorry. I hate to break it to you. Now, with the caveat, and I think I said this at the time to you, Tim, while I would kill baby Hitler, I wouldn't kill unborn baby Hitler because you never know. Maybe that kid will grow up to cure cancer or something.
Well, you need to listen to my last episode because I actually discussed that.
Oh, you did?
Yes, I jumped off of that to talk about something totally different.
Yeah. Would you kill baby Hitler?
No, I said that I would wait until he was killing his political opponents.
Yeah.
Then he would be a murderer. He would no longer be innocent.
Yeah.
So it would be justified.
Yeah. What about his paintings? Would you burn his paintings?
No, I would keep those. Wendy suggested you go do something to make Hitler's life turn out better. Mm-hmm. So maybe you go buy the paintings and just keep him busy painting instead of becoming a dictator. And that's better all around. Nobody's murdered.
Right.
And 6 million Jews are still alive in Eastern Europe.
Yeah. So that makes sense to me. I mean, while we may be against socialized healthcare, we're all for making Hitler's life a little better.
That was excellent. Yeah. Jeremy, I understand you think I'm wrong. You want to go ahead and tell me how I'm wrong about something other than Hitler.
About how I think you're wrong? Well, Tim, I mean, I think you invited me on this podcast to talk mostly about movie-related topics. So I'm content to keep it there. That's fine. Okay. I'll tell you what I'm impressed with, though. Not that this has anything to do with anything. You're of a very structured and thought out approach to even pre-scripting some of these moments. Is that okay to say to your audience?
I guess so. I guess yes. It's fine to tell them that I think about this ahead of time.
You think about it ahead of time. Even some of this you've written down. You're really intoning exactly what you mean without too much loosey goosey. I don't know, man. I mean, that's the kind of care and vision that I think more podcasts need.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I have to say this, Tim, and feel free to edit whatever you want out of this because I've got plenty of pride, but I'm not allowed to have any here. It seems like it's very interesting to me because while there's things that you and I agree on very deeply, there's also things that you and I don't think we quite come together on, But to me, and you can tell me if I'm wrong here, a lot of that comes down to nuance. Not necessarily. I think on the base level things, we agree that people deserve respect and dignity and opportunity. We believe that children in particular that are put in a position of desperation should be cared for and they should be our priority. And I think you and I come together on a lot of those kinds of things. But, there are issues that particularly as it relates to, certain things that are partisan hot buttons, sometimes it gets... So, sometimes, but this is what I was going to say. You tend to present it in a way that is, for me, very inspiring and also extremely frustrating because you make it so hard to disagree with you because you get this little nice guy, you got that kind of Mormon face, that everyone's just like, oh, well, he's clearly very sharp and put together. And, there's clearly no horrible issues going on in his life. You can just tell that everything is just very snapped up and clean. So I don't know,
so
man.
You'd like to poke me in the nose, but I present somebody that you're not allowed to poke.
I'm not allowed to poke you in the nose, exactly, because you're being too nice about everything. I'm like, man, oh man, this guy. And then to make matters worse, I have to go away, and I'm like, well, Tim said this, and I guess I gotta consider it now. So that's that's kind of lousy.
Well, yes, I recognize that we disagree on some things, and even when we disagree, I feel like we're friends, and we get together. We might need to not talk about that,
or we could,
maybe.
Whatever.
We could or maybe just give us some time and we can come back to it
with pre-written notes so we can keep it all fair and in the box.
That's right, just like the podcast. That's why you're here.
Yeah.
Where I get to write the rules and you have to obey the rules. You have to obey the box, the structure.
Yeah, that's fair.
Issue number 3. Hold the mayo. Okay, everybody, I'm going to explain the situation to you where Jeremy and I really disagree. And then we'll go for it. Okay. I'll let Jeremy go for it. I'll just explain the situation and it will make sense to you that I'm right. And Jeremy can kind of try to pull himself out of the hole that I've dug for him. So the movie industry, they were facing the threat of government censorship. So they came out with these rating systems. This is their own association, their own rating system. G, PG, PG-13, R, and X, or NC-17, excuse me. And they set up all these rules for what makes something PG versus R. For example, if you want a PG-13 movie, you can say the F word once. If you say it twice, or if you say MFer, you're automatically an R-rated movie. Now, in some situations, those rules are different. For example, network TV. You cannot say the F word. You cannot say, George Carlin has a whole list of words you can't say. Those are the words you can't say on network TV. And when the movie studios want to put their movie on network TV, they edit out all those words you can't say and all the other things they can't show you on network TV. In the last several years, technology has produced this product that it's a company called VidAngel, where they let you plug in your Netflix password or your Amazon Prime password, and then you can watch whatever's on Netflix or Amazon Prime, and you can tell them exactly what you want to see and what you don't want to see. Like they categorize everything. So like if you don't want to see nudity, they'll say, hey, there's a nude statue in the background of this scene, and you can choose whether or not you see it. Hey, just edit out all the S words and all the F words or whatever. I think this is great. I love it. I use it all the time. And I think other people would like to use it as well. I'm getting nothing from VidAngel, but if you're interested, go check them out. And the reason I think this is great is because when I go to buy a hamburger, I don't want Thousand Island dressing. I want it the way I want it. And I shouldn't have to have mayo on things because mayonnaise offends me. I don't like it. And I already know that the studios are playing these rules where like, hey, we wanted this PG-13 movie, so we got to take out that F word so that we get the PG-13 rather than the R. And I already know that they're changing their movies when they want to go on network TV or they want to be on the airline edit. They want to be on a transcontinental flight or whatever. So if they can change the rules of their movie to make it less offensive, why can't I? And let me give you just a particular instance where I think that movies are a commodity rather than art. Stephen King had a novel called Christine. It's not a great book. It's about this killer car that's demon-possessed, and it possesses its owner. So they made that into a movie in the early 80s. Also, not a great movie. So they put this movie together, and it's got some cool special effects where the car like comes back to life after being crushed up. But aside from that, not worth watching. So they make this movie, and they submit it for the rating system. And the rating system says, hey, great movie. This is a PG movie. And they said, oh, no. If we put out a Stephen King horror movie that's rated PG, nobody is going to want to watch it. So they refilmed a scene and they had a guy say the C word one time because that automatically forces you into the R section. They said, we will not make money unless the C word is in this movie. So the director didn't need the C word. The writer didn't include it. The actors, none of them thought to say it. It was a money-making decision to make that change. And if the studios can do that, then why can't I remove that word that nobody intended to be in the movie to begin with? Jeremy, tell me how I'm wrong.
Well, I mean,
go ahead, defend Christine.
But that's the thing. You can't defend Christine. And by the way, I say this, and I mentioned before, I'm a director. Christine is one of my DP's favorite movies. Somehow, I don't get it personally, but he references Christine all the time. He also worked with the DP of Christine on a couple different projects, so I think that influenced his own take on it, but whatever.
Wow.
That's its own thing. But here's the thing, man. I mean, are you cherry picking a little bit with your argument by going back to whatever it was, 1981 or whenever it was that Christine came out, and you're saying, look, someone used the C word in order to influence a rating, and therefore I should be able to manipulate all the art in the world that I feel is offensive to my taste buds.
All the art in the world, yes.
I mean, for heaven's
sakes. I want to manipulate all. So I can give you a more recent example if you want.
Let's hear a more recent one.
So VidAngel says that Game of Thrones, they filmed a scene and they presented it to the bigwigs at HBO, and the studio, whoever the guy is, he said, "Hey, there needs to be male genitalia in this. I represent the perverts who are going to watch this, and we want to see full frontal male nudity."
I'm so glad I'm being represented over there, by the way.
Say that
I'm
again?
so glad I'm being represented over there. It's a relief to me as a consumer of movies.
As a pervert, yes. So, that's what that came out like 5 years ago or so. Nobody intended, nobody's artistic vision said, yes, we're going to have full frontal male nudity. But somebody said, you need to have it.
Right. So I think there's a couple of different flaws here. Number one, you're comparing the language in a movie or the visual aesthetic of a movie as it pertains to what may and may not be shown in terms of like nudity or violence or something like that to Thousand Island dressing, right? I have it right. So
that's my argument.
That's your argument. So in other words, if you want to, and you also mentioned that you don't consider films art. Is that fair?
I think that they are a commodity where people are being asked to use their artistic skills to produce them.
Yeah. So are they? But is a film a piece of art?
Yeah, that's a bigger discussion about what is art, and I think some are art and others are not.
Okay, well, that is a bigger discussion then, because I do think that film is art. And
Dude, Where's My Car? Is that art?
Of course it's art. If you think that no artistry was involved, and this is something that Daniel and I talk about on our own podcast sometimes. And specifically, we were talking about Michael Bay. And what are the, his freshman film was, of course, Bad Boys. And he and I had a discussion. Like, okay, is Michael Bay an artist? Would he consider himself an artist? To me, the answer to that is self-evident. 100%, of course, he would consider himself an artist. And 100% Bad Boys, whatever you might think of it, is absolutely art. Dude, Where's My Car? Is art. Paul Blart is art. It even rhymes with art. Any film that we're going to talk about in which not just the artistry of an individual, but an artistry of teams of artists and creative individuals are putting their passion and risking their own careers and reputation over expressing a thing. And don't fool yourself. Every movie you've ever seen in your entire life falls in some way or another under that category, however bad, however good. It's true. Every movie you see is a miracle that it was shot and that it was made. So yeah, I guess, and this is the romantic side of me that you're hearing, absolutely. I think film is artwork. And I think that we're, it's like you described, which I find depressing, that it's just this commodity that's there to be consumed, and we should treat it as such. And it's not worthy of any more deference or respect than a Big Mac. I just don't agree with you, man. I think that that films in particular are not just art, but they're also in a way comments on our culture that we actually need. And I say that in terms of the good movies and the bad movies. And to come along and say, I'm only going to engage with this piece of art on my own terms and in the way that I've pre-decided. I mean, honestly, the depressing hubris of that you should be able to decide the way you're going to engage with everything. I mean, I'll say, like, take language, for example, and I know there's no swearing on this podcast, which I respect.
Thank you.
I'm personally someone who doesn't really see an issue with swearing. In fact, my wife and I joke around about the fact that our children are a lot more offended by swearing than we are. And so, anytime there's any kind of swearing or something like that, my wife and I kind of shrug about it because, I mean, ultimately, really, who cares? Who gives an S? That's our feeling. Now, not everyone agrees with us about that, but when we're forcing the art that we're experiencing to fit into those parameters, rather than the parameters that I'm going to say the artists themselves have come up with. And I think the studio itself can be included in that group of artists. Producers, while they may not necessarily be considered artists in the same way that directors or cinematographers are, they're all part of the team that's making, for good or for ill, artistic decisions about this thing that we're experiencing. So to come to them and say, no, I know better than you, and we're going to do this. And by the way, I don't think it should be left unsaid. VidAngel lost a lawsuit against that was leveled by Disney and Lucasfilm and 20th Century Fox and all this kind of stuff for doing, in my opinion, the really lousy work that they're doing, because they say, look, you don't get to just do that. That's an issue. We're presenting something in a certain way, in the way that we should think it should be presented. And, with all the compromises that come along with that, you don't get to just decide on your own how our art is presented. And I personally agree with that.
So what's the difference between me doing it and the director doing it so that it can be shown on NBC, on network TV, or on the airline? Is it just that he's agreed to it?
Well, I mean, if you want my honest opinion, I don't like it that it happens for network TV either. I think, honestly, I think it's sad that we live in a world where we say, there's things that I know that I wouldn't be able to handle, or I would be offended by, or something like that. So rather than just move on and experience some other piece of art somewhere else, I have to somehow change that art so that it's more acceptable to my palate. I don't agree with that, man. I mean, whatever happened to the challenge of watching something that you might be offended by or might disagree with, or, that kind of thing. I mean, the fact of the matter is, there are things that are in, there are things that are in the movie, The Life Aquatic, that I'm not ready to show my kids yet. I don't want to go through and edit The Life Aquatic so that it's ready for my kids. I want my kids to get ready for Life Aquatic, and that's the difference.
That's a great place to leave it.
All right.
But I could be wrong. If you think I am, let me know. And let me know why. I had fun, and I hope you did too. Bye-bye.